What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto neglected and ate gates? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to Oregon L, creator of this beautiful creation. This is some sort of joke, right, bird? The newly reinstated Cage was looking at the head of the Anbu medical department like she grew a second head. She wore the standard Anbu armor with a small red cross under her Anbu tattoo. The veins around her eyes popping out, and visible, despite her mask, giving away her status as a Hyuga. Speaking in the same emotionless tone that most Anbu and Hyuga develop, she replies, "I'm afraid not, Hokage-sama." Shaking his head, the Hokage spoke again. "Explain it to me again, I want to make sure I understand this. Remember bird, I am a killer, not a healer." The last statement seemed odd since he was smiling grandfatherly as he said it. For a ninja known as the professor, he sure can be dense. She never allowed her thoughts be shown on her face. Basically, we take a normal baby boy with undeveloped chakra coils and basically force the nine-tailed chakra battery into him. However, the seal was designed to not let anything out or in. Basically, all the chakra from the beast had to enter somewhere. Where do you think it did? Sarutobi Hiruzen looked confused, something that looked rather funny on the intelligent old man. In a questionable tone, Sarutobi answered, "His chakra points?" The medic gave a nod of confirmation. "But that is impossible, a newborn baby doesn't have chakra points." Bird sighed and shook her head. "No, that is a common misconception. They have chakra points. However, the coils have yet to join the points. Basically, he has chakra and chakra points, but no pathways to reach outside and control it." Sarutobi sighed sadly. "What will happen to him? I foresee a possibility of two outcomes. One, boosts his ninja potential untold amounts. The other, turns him into a weak civilian. We won't know until he is older." Sarutobi nodded. "Explain in more detail what could happen. I need to have something to tell the council." Nodding in understanding, she continued. "Well, the good one is that since his chakra has no pathways, it is merely floating around his body. As you may know, it is common practice for taijutsu practitioners to channel chakra to their muscles to increase performance. They do this by bleeding chakra from their pathways into their muscles. Naruto's chakra will always be in his muscles, bones, skin, organs, senses. He may turn out to be a tank. You have seen what Maida Guy can do when he channels chakra. Just imagine if he did it all the time, and his chakra was as potent as the nine-tailed fox's." Sarutobi's eyes went wide at the possibilities. Guy has taken the 8 gates to levels never before seen. If young Naruto is able to take what Guy has accomplished and bring it even further. What was the other possibility? Bird sighs. Basically, his organs and muscles can't take the chakra, and the effect will be opposite. Instead of dense bones, a mere flick could turn them to dust. Lifting a book would tear every muscle in his arm. You get the idea. The reality of the situation came crashing down on Sarutobi once again. Is there any way for us to influence the outcome? We could, but there is no way for us to know what outcome we would be influencing. Our best bet would be to wait until the results become obvious. That should be around 2-3 years old. If I'm correct, that is about how long it will take for either muscle deterioration or strengthen." Sarutobi nodded. "Thank you, bird." Sarutobi gathered the child and left Anbu headquarters to inform the council. As Sarutobi walked towards his tower, he couldn't help but think about what everyone's reactions would be. He thought back to when young Anko had returned to the village. They'd treat her as if she was the snake trader himself. As soon as he entered to chambers, he could almost taste the tension. Apparently so could young Naruto as he began to cry. In a rare show of affection, Sume Inuzuka was the first by his side and was able to quiet him down quite easily, came with experience of being a mother of 2. With Naruto firmly in the Inuzuka matriarch's hands, Sarutobi began the meeting. Danzo spoke first. "So, I assume you had the vessel's health and seal checked." Sarutobi was saddened slightly by that. "Yes. Well, the seal is perfect and working exactly how it should. However, the boy's health is the issue." All the shinobi frowned at that. They all knew what would happen if the child were to die. The demon would be free to try again. What issue? The question came from the ever-cold Hiyashi Hyuga. You see, the design of the seal had one minor flaw. Minato was worried that if something was to happen to the seal, Not to say that it would, but let's say a Jukin strike to the abdomen, there would be a chance of causing damage to the seal. Minato designed the seal to keep anything from entering and tampering with the seal, as well as keep the beast locked inside. Tsune's impatient voice broke the silence. So? Her yell woke Naruto up slightly, something she was quick to fix before returning her attention to the Hokage. Unfortunately, that includes the chakra of the beast. Think of the seal as a house with no door. There was no way for the chakra to enter. However, the pull was so strong that it had to enter. It went through the windows, the child's chakra points, effectively frying them. It was too much chakra for the undeveloped network and destroyed his internal network. However, his chakra points still work, so he will be able water walk and such, but that is about it. Now the shinobi had a very bad feeling. While Konoha did not actively pursue Jinchuriki, the fact that they were forced to create one was good news. Their military might have been slowly decreasing since the end of the war, and the Jinchuriki of the strongest tailed beast would have helped bring it back up, especially with the loss of Konoha's yellow flash. Danzo, however, was the most upset. What does this mean, Sarutobi? Sarutobi gave Danzo an aggravated glare. First of all, it's Hokage-sama. Second of all, one of two possibilities. One with Naruto having taijutsu potential that makes Maida Guy look like a genjutsu specialist. The other being where Naruto has the physical endurance of a donut. Everyone rose an eyebrow at that. It was Hiyashi that spoke. A donut, sir? Sarutobi shrugged. It has been a long day, and that is what came to my head first. The civilian council head looked outraged that the child was allowed to live, while the shinobi council looked disturbed by the possibilities. When is the earliest we would be able to learn which it is? Shikaku looked bored and intrigued at the same time. According to the Anbu head of medicine, approximately 2 to 3 years is when his body structure will either strengthen or deteriorate. The subject will not be brought up until then. Danzo's mind was working a mile a minute. A good taijutsu specialist is just what I need to partner with young Sai. 50% is a good enough chance for me. Together, they would be a force to be reckoned with. Konoha very well may get its weapon. Plus, if the child is anything but spectacular, that will allow me to reseal the beast into a host of my choosing. Hokage-sama. Danzo's distaste was not missed by any of the ninja in the room. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes at his once friend as he waited for him to speak. Where will the boy stay? He will need constant medical surveillance as well as a competent seal master nearby in case his health or the seal were to be endangered. As you know, my residence in Anbu HQ can provide both. Perhaps the child would be best in my care. Sarutobi immediately knew where he was going, however, he already had a plan. I apologize, but I have already decided that the child shall stay with me until he is slightly older. However, several clan heads did not like that. The Uchiha clan will not stand for that. That is putting too much political power into the hands of the Sarutobi clan. The Hyuga and Aburame clan heads agreed while the others didn't care that much. Well, that is good and all, but you're forgetting who is in charge here. That statement reminded all present just who they were dealing with. The god of shinobi was not a man you wanted as an enemy. However, your fears of the balance of power are unfounded. Seeing as young Naruto's Jinchuriki status is not to leave this room. Most of the council's eyes widened slightly. Though, it was Inoichi that spoke up first. Why Hokage-sama? A public Jinchuriki would be a great deterrent for war, especially if it is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki doesn't help us if he hates his village. Look at Iwa, they have both the 4 tails and 5 tails, however, Han, the 5 tails Jinchuriki never even participated in the last war. Roshi, the 4 tails Jinchuriki was only seen participating in one battle, and he turned on his own shinobi and slaughtered half of them before the battle even began. All because of the hate and scorn the villagers put on them. It is human nature to fear what is unknown, it is also human nature to hate fear. No, it will be kept a secret, and if we get put in a situation that leaking his status would be beneficial, then we will address the matter then. No one questioned their Hokage, he was a wise man after all. Before you go home, and, secretly, tell your families and friends, I want you to be aware. Nobody outside of this room is aware of his status. Anybody who is discovered to know, or even suspected of knowing, will be interrogated for the person who told them, and then both will be executed. Is that understood? Everyone's eyes became saucers. Sarutobi Hiruzen had always been a fair man. The fact that he was willing to kill an innocent individual, just to keep this quiet, told them exactly how serious he was. The clan heads nodded in understanding, and the meeting was adjourned. They left the room, many with concerned thoughts. Sume handed baby Naruto to Sarutobi on her way out. When he was sure he was alone, Sarutobi turned to Naruto, who returned his stare. "I'm sorry you had to see me like that. I just wouldn't be able to deal with the possibility of you being hurt." Naruto didn't seem to care, as he was already sleeping peacefully in the old cage's arms. 3 years later, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked down at the blonde-haired boy with a sad look in his eyes. The boy's skin was pale and ashy, his once bright blue eyes were dull and unresponsive. His spiky, golden blonde hair now was matted to his skull. The monitors attached to the boy were not giving good news. Soon, a middle-aged woman with brown hair and white eyes walked into the room, and waited for the Hokage to acknowledge her. "What is his condition?" The woman sighed. "Not good, sir. His kidneys are failing and his blood pressure is way too low to support his own life. His bone density has decreased by 77% and his brain function has all but ceased. I'm sorry to say, sir, but in my opinion, he won't make it through the night." It was only his years of emotional training that allowed the old cage to suppress the tears that were threatening to spill. "I had told myself I wouldn't get attached just in case this happened, but the kid just has a magic about him. I couldn't resist. It seems I will be burying Naruto Uzumaki Sarutobi, an honorary member of the Sarutobi clan." That was too much for even the professor. His tears fell, and he didn't try to stop them. "Will he feel any pain?" The doctor looked at the child in sadness. She had been the boy's personal doctor since she did the initial scan on him those years ago, and she really came to care for the boy. "No, between the pain medication we have him on, and his lack of brain function, he probably doesn't even know anything is wrong. He probably thinks he is sleeping." Sarutobi nodded slowly. "In that case, I will allow him to go as God intended. If his condition worsens before I return, please alert me." Surprised by the Hokage's suddenly cold voice, the doctor just nodded. However, her all-seeing eyes could easily tell that it was taking everything Sarutobi had, not to break down in tears. But that wouldn't help anyone. Sarutobi walked out of the hospital with a hard look in his eyes. As he was making his way towards the Hokage Tower, he called to one of his bodyguards. "Anbu." In a flash, 2 Anbu were at his feet, 1 cat and 1 boar. "You are to gather the clan heads. Tell them I will be starting the meeting in 15 minutes, with or without them." "Understood, Hokage-sama." The Anbu disappeared in a swirl of leaves. 10 minutes later, the Hokage walked into the council chambers and was pleased to find everyone in attendance. Most, however, looked rather upset and disheveled. Obviously, pulled from other duties to attend the meeting. None looked more upset than Hiyashi Hyuga, who was dripping wet with soap in his hair. He still wore his elegant Hyuga clan kimono, but it clung to his body because of the water. He obviously was in the shower when the Anbu showed up. Even with his state of dress, the man still looked regal but furious. "Hokage-sama, what was the meaning of this?" Sarutobi sighed sadly. "What we feared 3 years ago has in fact occurred." Everyone looked confused. "Naruto's body is failing. His doctor doesn't believe he will survive the night." Sume, Shikaku, Inoichi, and Choza all looked saddened by the news. Though it was tough to see, Hiyashi and Shibi also shifted uncomfortably. They had all taken a liking to the boy. His strong will and natural charisma just attracted people to him like a magnet. He would often spend time in the Hokage's office, just hanging out. Nearly every ninja in the village knew him, and every kunoichi thought he was the cutest kid. There wasn't a soul around that could resist little Naruto, sitting on the corner of the Hokage's desk, with the man's hat and robes way too big on his body. His megawatt grin never faltering. Sume spoke up. "What about a better doctor? There has to be something that could be done. I got him the best doctor in Konoha right now. Our only other option would be Tsunade, and Jiraiya told me 2 days ago that she was recently seen in the land of snow. He will be dead before she gets here." Even through his hard voice, they can see the sadness in his eyes. While he felt no sympathy for the child, Danzo was disappointed that the blonde child failed. Stealth and taijutsu were something that Konoha was severely lacking. They weren't ninja anymore, they were more like rock stars. Big flashy ninjutsu, genjutsu that wasted effort and chakra because it was cooler, not to mention taijutsu. The only real taijutsu expert Konoha had was Maeda Guy, and while he was good, it wasn't enough. However, in the interest of Konoha, there must be a Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Danzo spoke before anyone could interrupt him. Hokage-sama, what of the seal? Surely if the boy dies then the seal will be broken. The other members of the council began to speak among themselves. They had been so saddened by the loss of Naruto, that they forgot what he contained. It has already been taken care of. Jiraiya was able to negotiate with the Yondaime Raikage and acquired the Iron Bull seal. The same seal used to hold the Hachibi. He will be here tonight to assist with the sealing. Danzo, seeing his opportunity to strike, spoke again. Who will it be sealed into? Sarutobi sighed. His surrogate grandson was on death's door and all he could do was make sure that his death didn't result in the destruction of Konoha. We have yet to find a suitable container. However, it will be considerably easier using this seal because it will allow the chakra to slowly mend. As long as the child is under 10, then the seal and child will be fine. Danzo could barely hold back his smile. I have the perfect solution. An orphan nearly 5 years old, already shows a lot of potential and is very loyal to Konoha. Normally, Sarutobi would have immediately refused anything Danzo said, but it was to perfect. He gave him a nod and Danzo left to make his preparations. Sarutobi took one last glance at the council. We will have another meeting when the sealing is complete. Good day. Sarutobi wasted no time leaving the room and heading for his office. Sarutobi spent the next 6 hours mindlessly doing paperwork, not really thinking about anything but the fun he had with Naruto. After 6 hours, a somber voice that still managed to sound jolly came from his window. Hey, sensei. Sarutobi didn't turn around, he knew who was there, and why they were there. Jiraiya. The now identified Jiraiya spoke again, a hint of desperation in his voice. Are you sure there is nothing we can do, sensei? I'm afraid not. I knew this was a possibility but I didn't want to believe it. Jiraiya turned his gaze to the floor. I see. Both were startled by a knock on the door. Hokage-sama, Danzo Shimura is here. You said you wanted no visitors but he said you would wish to see him. Jiraiya looked at Sarutobi in a confused manner. Send him in. Hi Hokage-sama. The door opened and Danzo walked in, with a child about 5 years old walking next to him. The child had short black hair, and was wearing shinobi clothing. However, the thing that caught their eye, was the emotionless look on his face. Jiraiya knew exactly what he was. One of Danzo's drones. However, Sarutobi's thoughts were slightly different. Being one of Danzo's root, he is most certainly loyal only to him, and he is loyal to Konoha. A disloyal Jinchuriki would be bad for Konoha. However, he is an orphan so there is no risk of his parents abandoning him, not to mention, the emotional training will help with dealing with the beast. I guess we have no choice. Much to Jiraiya's shock, Sarutobi gave a barely perceptible nod as he stood and they began to make their way to the hospital. You will not regret this, Hokage-sama. With only a slight glance, Sarutobi spoke. For your sake, I hope not, Danzo, I hope not. It didn't take long for them to reach the hospital. Upon arriving at Naruto's room, all three adults were surprised to see half a dozen doctors running around like crazy. Yelling could be heard. Give him a chakra pulse, clear. The room flashed green and the erratic heart monitor stabilized. When Naruto's doctor saw the Hokage with Jiraiya and Danzo, she understood what was to be done. She was one of very few people in Konoha who knew of Naruto's burden. With a small nod, Naruto's doctor herded everyone out of the room before leaving herself, pausing only to look at Naruto one more time. As she was walking out the door, she heard the Hokage. Thank you, Kai? She left with a slight nod. Alone, each was thinking about the situation. Oh, God, Naruto, how much pain must you endure? Well, if it's any consolation, your pain will end soon. Minato, I hope you can't see this from the Shinigami's stomach. If you can, you are probably beating yourself up. If only you would have listened to me. I told you, you needed to create a hole to allow the chakra in. I guess it doesn't matter now. Due to his responsibility as Konoha's spymaster, and the fact that he didn't believe he had anything to offer the kid, Jiraiya rarely saw Naruto. When he would stop in Konoha to deliver reports, he would hang out with his godson, but he knew it wasn't enough. Too bad he failed. Konoha would have prospered with him as a shinobi. Oh well, young Sai here will just have to take your place. When the room was empty, and Jiraiya finished the chakra sensor seals and security seals, he turned to Sai. Kid, I need you to remove your shirt. Without any further prompting, the boy did so. It was nearly 2 hours later that Jiraiya finished. The entire time, Danzo watched Jiraiya to assure no mistakes were made, while Sarutobi just stared at his surrogate grandson. Jiraiya slowly approached the unconscious Naruto. I'm sorry Naruto, the doctors say you won't feel a thing. As soon as I finish the seal, the beast will automatically move. I'm sorry I was never there for you. With that said, Jiraiya began to draw the transfer seal. He and Sarutobi both had tears in their eyes. Another hour later, and there was only one more symbol, the activation key. Looking towards his sensei for guidance, he received a short nod. With the emotion of a dead man, he placed the last bit of ink. Instantly, a shroud of red surrounded the boy. Unsure if it was normal, all three S-class ninja were prepared for a fight. However, the shroud seemed to just surround the boy and slowly began to leak to the unconscious raven-haired boy. Inside the seal wasn't like most. Every seal the beast had ever known was usually some sort of labyrinth with a cage. While this one was a labyrinth, there was no cage. He had partial control of his surroundings. Hell, his last seal had him chained to a wall. The giant fox growled angrily as it watched his freedom slowly get taken from him. Suddenly, a chain erupted from the seal on the wall and wrapped around his neck. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't free himself. Before he knew it, all 4 legs and 3 tails were chained together. The giant fox growled even more when it felt its chakras slowly leave him. I will never be restrained again. Suddenly, the fox exploded with power. The whole tunnel system that represented not only the seal but also his container's mind, became aflame with the Kyuubi's corrosive chakra. Even in his unconscious state, Naruto could feel more pain than he ever had before. In Naruto's room, beep 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 beep. All the adults turned quickly when Naruto's body started to shake and his heart rate skyrocketed. It lasted nearly 30 seconds before it stopped. Beep 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 beep. Beep. Because the gateway seal was already in place, there was no risk of the Kyuubi escaping. However, Sarutobi and Jiraiya couldn't keep the tears from their eyes. Both shared the same thoughts. I'm so sorry Minato, Kushina. However, they were beginning to get worried. Naruto had been dead for nearly a minute, and Kyuubi's chakra stopped flowing from Naruto to Sai. However, what Danzo saw shocked him. The cord attached to the heart monitor was disconnected when Naruto had begun thrashing around. Moving quicker than any man of his age should be able to, he plugged the monitor in. For a second all was quiet, then they heard it. Beep 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 beep. The other 2 in the room were just as shocked. He's still alive. Sarutobi ran to the door before yelling out. Anbu, get me Kai Hyuga immediately. However, before they could leave, they heard her shout. I'm here, what's wrong? Without saying another word, he pulled her in. Danzo was doing what he could as far as a medical scan, but he couldn't understand what he was seeing. He quickly moved so she could do her job. She activated her Byakugan before flashing through several hand seals. Her hands turned green and she scanned his body. She couldn't stop the shocked whisper from leaving her lips. Incredible? What? All 3 adults shouted in unison. He'll be fine. The others were even more shocked than before. What? How? When? Huh? She nearly giggled at seeing undoubtedly the 3 strongest men in the village turned into incoherent messes. Luckily, her Anbu and Hyuga training prevented it. It appears as though the 9 Tails does not wish for his host to die, or was trying to kill him faster. Danzo was the first to speak. Explain? Well, the amount of demonic chakra in his body rapidly increased. My first guess would be that it was attempted to escape, but no, it is simply flowing around his body. It even caused the release of the gate of opening. The added demonic chakra mixed with the influx of his own chakra and appears to be healing him at an incredible rate. I can literally watch the muscle fibers that were practically made of glass 2 hours ago form together, probably as hard as steel. However, all that was missed on 2 of the 3. So, he'll be fine? Kai gave her first smile of the day. Yes, Naruto-kun will be fine. Sarutobi and Jiraiya were sure they heard music going off in the background. Mistake or not, they both owed the 9-tailed fox a thank you. Danzo was having difficulty suppressing his own smile. From what I have seen of the boy, he possesses a strong will as well as decent intelligence, not to mention his undying loyalty to Konoha. I just need to make sure his potential isn't wasted. 10 minutes later, Danzo left with the unconscious Sai. Had the boy opened his eyes, they would have noticed the red flakes in his normally black eyes, before it disappeared and they returned to normal. Sarutobi and Jiraiya remained in the boy's room nearly all night, discussing what should be done. Jiraiya wanted to take the boy with him, to train and raise him. But, after a lengthy discussion, both agreed that life on the road was not a good one for a child. So, Naruto would continue to reside in the Sarutobi compound, and whenever Jiraiya dropped off his report, he would hang out with Naruto. 2 days later, Sarutobi was in a good mood. Naruto, while still unconscious, was getting better by the day. The fact that he would live, as well as be a valuable asset to Konoha, quickly silenced anyone on the council that was still against the boy. Not that there were too many nowadays. The one thing that bothered him was that Danzo was strangely quiet during the meeting. Almost as if he supported the boy. He knew Danzo wasn't a bad man, he was merely had a very pessimistic view on the world and was willing to do anything to ensure that Konoha remained on top. When Sarutobi heard a knock on his door, he allowed them to enter. He was rather surprised to see the object of his current thought enter the room alone. That was surprising in its own right, since he rarely did anything without the elders. They backed him, giving him almost equal power to his own. Almost. What can I do for you, Danzo? Danzo spoke bluntly. You know I don't like you, or your ways. Sarutobi hid his surprise at the, usually aloof, one-eyed man's blunt words. I'm well aware of that. However, I believe we can come to an agreement on a very important matter at hand. Sarutobi immediately knew what this was involving. No longer was he Sarutobi Hiruzen, he was the god of shinobi, feared all across the elemental nations. A slight inclination of his head was the only response Danzo gave. He knew that he was no longer dealing with the kind old man, but the man who fought and won 2 wars, the man that had killed more S-rank ninja than any other man alive. Danzo couldn't help but give a slight bow of respect to the man in front of him. We both know the boy has amazing potential, it must be harnessed. Konoha needs a weapon like him. Sarutobi was about to snap, but Danzo cut him off. Don't be a fool, Sarutobi, we both know shinobi are just weapons. It actually calmed Sarutobi down, to know that Danzo wasn't just referring to Naruto as a weapon, but to shinobi in general. The only difference between me and you is that I acknowledge that shinobi are just weapons to be wielded by their leader. Sarutobi couldn't help but nod slightly. He knew that shinobi were weapons, he just didn't like that way of thinking. The only question I have now, are you going to just send him to the academy, forge him into an average quality kunai to be thrown at a random enemy and hope for a hit, or are you going to get a master blacksmith, have him turn that boy into a sword that will shape the future of this world? The analogy was perfect. Should Naruto become an average ninja, or a ninja of legends? Sarutobi gave Danzo a small smirk. This is going to be one beautiful blade, won't it, Danzo? In a rare show of emotion towards his rival, Danzo gave his own smirk. One incredible blade indeed. 6-year-old Naruto was staring at the board in front of him with an angry expression. He was losing, again. Despite his best efforts, complicated tactics seemed to be unattainable. He easily saw the best move for the small picture, but the big picture eluded him. 1 year ago, Gramps had brought him over to one of the other clan's houses. Apparently Gramps wanted him to learn to play this game. Well, 1 year later and he still sucked. Naruto looked across the board and almost blew his top when he saw his opponent, Shikamaru Nara, sleeping. Shikamaru was a genius that would probably surpass his father one day. However, if it was possible, he was even lazier. The worst part was that he was a year younger than him. Every time he lost, his pride took a hit. Just as he was about to wake the sleeping boy up, he smirked. He quickly moved the pieces into a position that would make him the winner before getting up and walking away with a smug smile on his face. He didn't know it, but Shikaku, Shikamaru's father, was watching with a smirk of his own. Interesting, very interesting. That was the day Naruto won his first game of shinobi tactics, not that he knew it. 2 weeks later, Sarutobi was in his office, making the last of the preparations for the next day. Anbu. In a flash, a boar-masked Anbu appeared. Yes, Hokage-sama? Without looking up from the paperwork, he spoke. Please bring me Yugo Uzuki. Yes, Hokage-sama. 20 minutes later, the boar-masked Anbu entered the room, slightly trailed by Yugo Uzuki. Thank you, boar. The Anbu nodded before disappearing into the shadow. The Hokage looked up to see the ever-beautiful Yugo Uzuki. She had long purple hair, to the small of her back and dark gray eyes. She wore dark blue shinobi pants, dark blue, long-sleeved shirt, with a standard chunin vest. Her katana was on her back and she was ready for whatever mission the Hokage had for her. She was the epitome of beauty and lethality. She was even considering taking a position in the Anbu Black Ops. You requested my presence, Hokage-sama? Yes, I have a sort of mission for you. It is only D rank, which I know is an insult. I just want to make sure it is done right. Plus, you will get to watch the Chunin exams tomorrow for free. Any mission you wish for me to complete, I would be happy to. Of course, of course. Anyways, my grandson, Naruto, I believe you know him. Yugo gave a slight nod with a small smile. Well, he wished to attend, but I could find no one to watch him, so I told him he would be unable to attend. Well, I was shocked when he ran into my office just yesterday with his piggy bank. He had nearly saved enough money for a D-rank mission. Yugo was shocked. Little Naruto saved up his money so he could pay for a mission to watch the exams? Sarutobi nodded and smiled proudly. I'll do it on one condition. The Hokage raised an eyebrow at that. They both knew she would do it either way. Take the money from the mission and buy the kid a boken. I'd like to see what he could do with Kenjutsu. Sarutobi smiled slightly and agreed. Okay, the exams start at 9, so be at my compound at around 8. Yes, Hokage-sama. The next morning, Naruto stood outside the front door. Anyone who looked at him could see the excitement in his eyes. He was practically vibrating. When Yugo started to walk up to the door, she didn't get very far when Naruto ran up to her and tackled her with a flying hug. Yugo-chan, are we going now, huh? Huh? Are we? She giggled at his antics before nodding. She set him down and he grabbed her hand and took off running at speeds not usually seen until the graduating the academy. Yugo couldn't help but be shocked at his natural speed. At their speed, it didn't take long at all to arrive at the stadium and take their seats. They were surrounded, mostly by civilians. Naruto looks down at the stadium floor, where the contestants were. He was easily able to identify 4 of the 10. A Hyuga, Aburame, Nara, and Uchiha. There was one more average-looking Konoha nin, along with 5 that were from different villages. Naruto watched the fights with a sparkle in his eyes. He was amazed by the Hyuga's taijutsu style. He thought the Aburame's style was a little weird but effective. His favorite was definitely the winner. He was the unknown. It turned out his name was Izumo Kamizuki. He wore standard Chunin attire with the exception of the flak jacket. His forehead protector was on a bandana that forced his brown hair over his right eye. He used a combination of taijutsu and kenjutsu, with a little ninjutsu thrown in. As they were making their way back to the Sarutobi compound, Yugo carried him on her shoulders. He continued to talk animatedly about the different fights and how he was gonna be stronger than all of them. Even she had a smile on her face as she walked through the village. It was a very happy, yet tired Naruto that was dropped off at home that night. When Sarutobi walked into his home, after dealing with all the paperwork of the exams, he was rather shocked and amused when he saw that Naruto didn't even make it to his room. He fell asleep on the couch. The old Kage picked the boy up carefully and whispered to him. Well, I hope you're ready for a long day tomorrow. You're starting your training. It was about 7 when Naruto woke up, well rested, and he had a dream about him being the greatest ninja in the world. Who needs ninjutsu and genjutsu? He was smiling happily while thinking about the dream when there was a knock on the door. Naruto-kun, are you awake? Yay, Gramps. Sarutobi opened the door and saw Naruto daydreaming while sitting on his bed. Well, you better get dressed in those training clothes I got you. Your new sensei will be here in 20 minutes. Naruto's eyes lit up with pure joy. I get to start training? Sarutobi just smiled and nodded as Naruto jumped on him and gave him the strongest hug he had ever received. The boy didn't even wait for him to leave before he started tearing off his sleeping clothes and putting on the durable training clothes his Gramps got him. When he was ready, he was dressed in dark green shinobi pants, with a long-sleeve black shirt. Just as he was slipping on his shinobi sandals, there was a knock on the door. Naruto rushed towards the door, but as soon as he did he slammed it shut, screaming. It was pretty incoherent, but Sarutobi is sure he heard something about face-eating eyebrows. After a very amusing talk with Guy muttering things about unyouthful gakis, they were out in the field of the Sarutobi clan compound with Guy in one of his rare, serious moods. Okay, Naruto-kun. Most of the time, people will start by getting faster and stronger, before working on stances. However, you are very young. It is very rare for someone so young to begin training. So, we will begin with stances. The style I will be teaching you is the Goken, or strong fist. It relies on high speed, strength and physical endurance. Naruto was listening, giving Guy his full attention. Okay, Naruto. Do you understand why we are doing things differently? Yes, Guy-sensei. I am young, therefore, any physical training that would be done would be a waste of time since I would only receive a small portion of the results than if we wait. Guy gave Naruto a thumbs up and a smile. Okay, here is your first stance. It is a basic defensive stance and will allow for easy grapples. It is the center point of all the defensive stances of strong fist. Guy got into a low, horse stance. His feet wide but still well balanced. With a quick hand seal, a mud clone of Guy rose from the earth. I'm going to use clones to show you how each stance would be used in combat. As Guy stood in his defensive stance, the clone got into what appeared to be an offensive stance. His legs and back straight, his right arm by his neck and his left out in front of him, palm up. Pay careful attention, Naruto-kun. Seeing Naruto nod eagerly, Guy gave the signal to his clone. The clone rushed forward with a right punch towards the face, but the real Guy just caught it and rolled with the punch, throwing the clone over his shoulder in the process. The clone's less than gentle impact with the ground turned it back to mud. When Guy looked over, he was surprised to see Naruto already trying the defensive stance. He has a lot of flaws, but that is to be expected. He got the very basics. After seeing it, only once, his flames of youth burned brightly. At first, Guy wasn't sure he wanted this part-time mission. He was given a direct order to keep the flames of youth speeches to a minimum. But seeing the kid's observation skills and potential, he is beginning to think it was worth it. Not to mention that this kid will be great eventually and he wants to be able to say he had a part in making him great. Not bad, Naruto-kun, but move your left foot back, now to the right, good. Your right arm should be lower, good. Your head needs to lean forward a little. Straighten your back. As Guy inspected the form, it was just about perfect. Good, now I want you to hold that for as long as you can. In more seriousness than a child should be capable of, Naruto replies. Yes, Guy-sensei. Keep the stance firm and rigid. Guy simply took a few steps back and sat down in a lotus position, watching for the boy to shift even slightly. He managed to hold the stance for nearly 3 hours with Guy coming up and checking every aspect of his stance every few minutes before his leg finally cramped up and his leg moved. This shocked Guy. He lasted much longer than I had anticipated. Very good, I'm impressed. Again, Naruto dropped back into the stance without a word. 2 weeks later. The last 2 weeks had been much more boring than Naruto thought they would be. All he did was stand in his stance, all morning, before going over to Shikamaru's to play shogi against him. However, he kept going. Every day, after Guy would talk to his gramps he would get a congratulations. Apparently, Guy and his gramps thought he was doing very good. The doorbell rang and Guy was there. They both went to the field and just as Naruto was settled into his stance, he rolled out of the way of a kick from Guy before getting back into the defensive stance, just in case his sensei attacked him again. What the hell, Guy-sensei? Guy smiled brightly. Naruto-kun, it is time to move on to the next step of your training. Many will try and tell you what you should do in each situation. That is a poor way to learn. Often one person's instincts will be much different than another's. That results in your mind and instincts clashing, such as, the kick I just attempted, while you rolled out of the way, positioned for an effective counter-attack to my exposed back, I would have latched on and attempted to land a hit. Had I told you what to do, your instincts would have said roll, but your mind would have said block, slowing your reaction. Do you understand? I think so. Good, because we are just getting started. With that, Guy charged at the kid slowly, allowing him to get a feel for what he should do. 4 months later, a tired and bruised Naruto walked into his house after an extra long training session with Guy. Every day, Guy was moving faster, making his mind and instincts work faster. No, not like Jonin's speed, more like fourth-year academy student, just scratching the speed of Genin. But he started at civilian. He now had a full understanding of his instincts and no longer questioned them. A few hundred punches and knees to various parts of his body made sure of that. When he walked into his room he fell down on his bed. Just as he could feel sleep claiming him, a knock on his door brought him back. Yay? An amused chuckle could be heard from outside of the door. May I come in, Naruto-kun? Sure thing, Gramps. The door opened to reveal the elderly Hokage, still in his robes and looking rather tired. Guy told me you have been doing increasingly well at your taijutsu training. Even though it hurt, the young boy beamed a smile to his Gramps. Seeing the pain in the smile, Sarutobi smiled proudly. Well, I just came to tell you that your time with Guy will be cut down significantly. You will now only be seeing him 3 days a week instead of 6 like you have. Naruto's eyes went wide. Did I do something wrong? Sarutobi chuckled good-naturedly. Of course not, Naruto-kun. He just has to return to his duties. He is after all one of the strongest ninja in Konoha. Naruto nodded in understanding. So, will I be training by myself? No, I have a new trainer for you. His name is Hayate, and he will spend 3 days a week with you as well. Naruto smiled happily. Well, tomorrow is your first day with Hayate, you better get some sleep. The next morning, Naruto is sitting cross-legged in front of Hayate while the man talks. Okay, I am in charge of teaching your weapons training. For now, we will focus on basic kunai and shuriken. Cough cough. However, once you have mastered those, we will begin to work on swords, cough asterisk. At this point Naruto was beaming with excitement. Hayate handed Naruto several kunai and shuriken. Throw them each one at a time, and aim for the bull's eye. Thunk, thunk. 6 months later. That was basically how he spent the next 6 months. Every other day would be with either Hayate or Guy. The Hokage was very happy with the results, he was learning quickly. 7-year-old Naruto was walking happily down the street after eating some ramen. He was on his way to buy some new kunai. His were dull and were well beyond repair. He had been using the same 12 kunai for target practice for the last 5 months. It wasn't really surprising that they would need to be replaced. His Gramps had told him how to get to the weapon store, but he must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. As he is going, he sees a tall ninja, wearing standard Jonin garb with tall, silver hair, a mask covering his face, and his forehead protector was covering his left eye. The ninja wasn't paying attention to anything but the book in his hand. Running up, he stops in front of the unnamed Jonin. Hey ninja-san. The Jonin looks up uninterested and raised an eyebrow, his eyes slightly widening before returning to his lazy look. Naruto-kun, you sure are growing up nicely. I'm glad Hokage-sama decided to take you in. Maybe one day I will be able to bury my skeletons deep enough to truly help you. Me? Yep, I was wondering if you knew where the Higurashi weapon shop was. Gramps gave me directions, but I think I made a wrong turn. The Jonin smiled, at least Naruto thinks he did. The man's eye crinkled in a way that could only be a smile. You came from that street down there? The still, unnamed Jonin pointed to the street behind him. Yay. If anything, the man's smile got wider, he thinks. Well, you should have gone right instead of left. A light went off in Naruto's head as he nodded enthusiastically. Thank you, what's your name? I'm Kakashi, nice to meet you Naruto. As Kakashi started to walk away, he was startled by a shout. Hey, how did you know my name? Kakashi raised an eyebrow in amusement. I've seen you in Sarutobi-sama's office on several occasions. Naruto thought for a minute but came up with nothing. It wasn't all that surprising, he really only remembered the ones who would hang out with him. Oh, okay. Thanks again. As Naruto took off running, Kakashi smiled happily that his sensei's son was so well cared for. It took Naruto all of 2 minutes to find the shop he was looking for. As soon as he walked in, he was shocked. Kunai, shuriken, senbon, swords, knives, exploding tags, sealing tags, smoke bombs, pepper bombs. Everything a ninja would ever need was in there. He was practically salivating. Hey kid, you can't be in here without a parent. Naruto looked over to see a large man, with brown, shaggy hair walk out of the back room. Gramps said you would say that. He said to give you this. You're Kenju, right? The man nodded and Naruto handed the man a small note. Hello Kenju. As you may know, this is my grandson, and I was too busy to take him out to get more kunai and shuriken. If you would be so kind as to let it slide this one time. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandame Hokage. That wily old goat, bending the rules so he can get more each a time. Hee, can't blame him. Naruto backed up slightly at the man's perverted giggle. He saw his gramps do it all the time. It was often followed by a shower of blood. So, you just need some kunai and shuriken? Naruto was about to respond when a shout was heard from the same room that Kenju came from. What? That's not fair. If I can't use real kunai and shuriken, he shouldn't be able to either. Naruto turned and glared at the voice. Who are you to say what I can and can't do? A brown, bun-haired girl about the same age as him stalked up to him and poked him in the shoulder. I live here. Kenju had a sweat drop of epic proportions going down the back of his head, and it was only getting bigger. Naruto poked her back. Well, I have money. The little girl glared with pure rage in her eyes. I don't care. We don't want your stinky money. It probably smells as bad as you. Well, it can't smell any worse than you. Stinky. Tenten gasped before glaring harder and moving her head forward. I'm gonna tell. Naruto's head pushed against Tenten's. You wouldn't dare? Tenten pushed back. Do you want to bet? By this time, they resembled a pair of big-horned sheep, pushing each other back and forth, and Kenju was clueless on what to do. Yeah, I bet I can hit more targets than you. Ha, in your dreams. You probably don't even know what a kunai is since your dad won't let you use them. Turned out that was the wrong thing to say as she grabbed him by the shirt and literally dragged him from the store into the back, where they had targets set up. Kenju watched his daughter drag the Hokage's adoptive grandson outside. When they were clear of the house, Kenju looked up with a confused expression on his face. What do I do now? Slightly scared, Kenju slowly made his way out of the shop, towards where the kids were competing with dull, metal knives. The second he walked outside, his sweat drop returned. They were yelling again and the two hay-baled targets had the same score. 2 of the 10 were at the bull's eye, 4 were in the next line, and the last 4 were in the line after that. All this started because she is still upset I won't let her train with real kunai until she starts the academy. Getting tired of the screaming, but nothing seems to be working, he decided to take a page out of a certain academy instructor's book. Shut up. Kenju couldn't help but face fault when both kids stopped glaring at each other and turned to him with the saddest, most innocent look he had ever seen. Resist, cuteness, too much cuteness. Sigh. Okay, Tenten, you can use real kunai and shuriken as long as I am there to watch you. They didn't let up. Here you go Naruto, 2 sets of kunai and 2 sets of shuriken. They both stopped, the look, like they had planned it that way. So, your name's Tenten? The brown-haired, brown-eyed girl nodded to Naruto. Well, I'm Naruto, and I am starting the academy next year. What about you? Tenten grinned. I start next year too. That's awesome. Kenju was just staring at them like they were stupid. How do they go from nearly killing each other to best friends, in less than 5 seconds? My head hurts. As Naruto was walking out the door, he had a smirk on his face. Bye Stinky, see you later. Naruto took off running, laughing the whole time and Tenten tried to chase him but Kenju had a firm hold on her shirt. Tenten turned around and gave him the look again but he smirked. I've had 6 years to learn how to resist yours, it won't work sweetheart. I was only caught off guard by you 2 double-teaming me. It won't happen again. Tenten just pouted before glaring at the direction that Naruto ran to. I'll get you one of these days. 9 months later. Naruto glared angrily at his target, 15 yards away. All 10 kunai were in the bull's eye, except one. He glanced from his target to the other one, 30 yards back, with all 10 in the bull's eye. He glanced next to him to see Tenten, grinning smugly. No matter what he does, no matter how much he improves, she is always better, and it infuriates him to no end. His taijutsu is vastly superior to hers, but that doesn't matter. In a sing-song voice, Tenten gets his attention. You gotta say it. No, you cheated. I did not. Did too. Did not. Did too. Did n. Quiet. Both Naruto and Tenten looked to see a huffing and puffing Kenju. Apparently, he had enough of their yelling. Sorry dad. Sorry Kenju-san. Just as he walks back inside, he can hear them start again. Look what you did. You got us in trouble. Me? You started it. He sighs as he turns around and heads back towards the training area. I'm too old for this shit. Did T. Do I have to ground you, Tenten? No daddy. Good, now keep it down. Like the fight never happened, they went back to target practice. This time, when he lost, Naruto had no choice but to say it. Girls rule and boys drool. There, happy? Tenten smiled proudly. Yep. The next day, Naruto was outside with Hayate. He was going over the basics of swordplay. Since earlier that morning, he received his first Bakken. It was time for him to learn to use a sword, something he is sure that Tenten would be jealous of. Which she was. 3 months later, Kenju is walking both Tenten and Naruto towards the academy for their first day. Both really excited to show the other up. When they arrived on the grounds, they were nearly an hour early. Slightly nervous, Naruto and Tenten decided to stay with Kenju until it was closer to time for class. As they watched different people arrive, Kenju was pointing out the different clans. See the boy with the white eyes and the brown hair? Yay, that's a Hyuga. Very good. How did you know that? Naruto smiled proudly. Gramps let me go to the Chunin exams last year and Yugo-chan explained all the competitors to me. There was one Hyuga. Kenju nodded in understanding. Okay, why don't you explain to Tenten about the Hyuga? They're a clan that specializes in taijutsu that only they can do because they have these weird eyes. Kenju chuckled at the innocent but accurate explanation. The Hyuga clan has the most effective taijutsu style in all the elemental nations. That is due to their eyes, the Byakugan. It allows them to see their opponent's chakra points and to control their chakra and insert it through other people's chakra points. From there, they can either seal the chakra point, or send the chakra to attack an internal organ. No amount of training will ever increase the damage an organ can take. Both kids were starstruck at that. Wow, so they're like the strongest ninja in the world, right? Kenju chuckled. Hey, no they actually aren't. In fact, if I remember correctly their clan has the greatest number of A-rank ninjas in the village but in all of their history, only one S rank. Their taijutsu is the best, but as a clan, their superiority in taijutsu has led to them relying solely on that. They refuse to learn gen or ninjutsu. Both Tenten and Naruto chorused their thoughts. That's stupid. Maybe, oh, look there's an Inuzuka. They use incredible teamwork with their animal companions. They can be a force to be reckoned with. As all three continue to look, Naruto spots a boy with blonde hair. Is he from a clan? The three spend the next hour just learning about the different clans, or even just families of their classmates. It helps when your father supplies the weapons to 90% of the village's shinobi. Kenju noticed several Chunin gathering at the entrance. Okay, kids, class is about to start so I'm gonna take off. I'll be here when it's over. And no fighting, you hear? They both nod with an innocent look in their eyes. He can already see the Anbu showing up at his shop because his daughter was fighting Naruto in the middle of an introduction. He just sighs as he makes his way home. With the children, they are listening to a scarred instructor talk about shinobi life. Okay, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Iruka Amino. I am the head instructor at the academy. I will now be directing you to what room you should go to. If you are here for your 4th year, or if you failed your last 4th year, please go to room 103. If this will be your 3rd year. Naruto and Tenten were making their way to the room that the newcomers were supposed to go to. When they arrive, they see 8 kids about their age. They take a seat next to a kid with black hair to his shoulders, big eyebrows and perfectly round, black eyes. Hello, my name is Rock Lee and. However, Rock Lee was interrupted when Iruka spoke. Okay, you are all here for your 1st year of the Ninja Academy. Let me tell you, there are 10 students in here right now. I would say, 3 at most are going to pass. All the children went wide-eyed and slack-jawed at that. Just as they were all about to shout out, an ominous feeling washed over them. Some of the weaker ones relieved themselves before passing out. The average ones just cried a little. The strongest ones, consisting of Naruto, Tenten, Rock Lee, and the unnamed Hyuga, just began sweating a lot and slightly whimpering. On the outside, Iruka looked furious, but on the inside, he was hurting. They're just children. What could the Hokage wish to accomplish by doing this? Flashback. In the Hokage's office stood 7 Chunin. They were the instructors of the academy. I called you here because after going over the curriculum, I have now been able to figure out why exactly we still have fangirls graduating. I have talked it over with an associate of mine, and although I need the council's permission to change what is taught, And that will take a few years. As of now, how it is taught will be changed. One of the Chunin spoke up. But Hokage-sama, the system works, why change it? The Hokage simply shook his head. Does it make it so our numbers increase? Sure. However, it is supplying us with ninja who never get past C rank. This village hasn't produced a truly powerful shinobi since Itachi Uchiha. Konoha is the strongest of the Great Five. If we want to stay that way, we must up our training. Kumo has yet to demilitarize since the Third Shinobi War. As it sits, they would demolish us. Hearing the Hokage blatantly state that they would be unable to win a war with Kumo was disheartening to say the least, considering that 10 years ago they could win a war against Kumo and Iwa at the same time. The scarred Chunin, named Iruka, spoke next. What would you have us change, Hokage-sama? You said so yourself that we are unable to change what is taught without council approval because the students are technically still civilians. The Hokage nodded that the Chunin was indeed correct. I want you to change several things. For one, when the students act out of line, talking and such, I want you to hit them with a small blast of killer intent. All the Chunin gasped. But Hokage-sama, that. The Hokage raised a hand to silence him. It may seem cruel, but I have been going over mission reports and discovered that in the last 3 years, 32 genin have died for the simple fact that they had never experienced killer intent. It was used by a nin they could have beat, or at least delayed, but the nin blasted them with their ki and stunned them. During their 4th year, I would like for you to work on showing them how to create their own. It will not be a part of their grade, just a personal test. You understood, Hokage-sama. The Hokage continued. I was able to find a loophole and make the stupid flower pressing class optional. The kunoichi who opt to join, I want you to watch extra carefully. They are likely to be the weakest and ones who don't care about training. The female Chunin and teacher of the class looked disgruntled but nodded anyways. The final change will be the test. We used to just give the students a written test and then test their ninjutsu scores. However, it has come to my attention that there are 2 students in this year's new students that are unable to use any ninjutsu. However, I have also seen both train and are probably stronger than anyone else in the class. So, the test will consist of the written test, the ninjutsu test, a thrown weapons test, a genjutsu test, and finally, a taijutsu test. End flashback. Iruka sighed. They were only children, but they wouldn't be for long. He had 4 short years to turn these quivering babies into hardened killers. He noticed that one of the students who passed out started to get a nosebleed and let the ki drop. Soon the 4 that were only sweating were panting, trying to understand what just happened. The ones that were crying were still trying to wipe the tears away, but they kept coming back. The unconscious ones were still unconscious. Iruka flashed through a few hand seals. Water release. Water spout jutsu. Water shot from his mouth like a garden hose, drenching the still unconscious children awake. When they were all awake and paying attention, Iruka spoke. That there was killer intent, or ki for short. It is basically projecting your chakra with anger. That was a very small amount. Throughout your time here, you will become very familiar with it. The ones that were sweating or crying seemed to understand, but the ones that passed out looked like they were going to complain until Iruka glared and they could feel the incoming doom. They quickly shut up. Well, since you are all so behaved right now, we will start with history. Iruka pulled out a book and began reading. Hashirama Senju, the Shodem Hokage, was a man of great power and great charisma. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Sarutobi was looking at the file in front of him. He glanced up at the man in front of him. He was as old as himself, with bandages across his right eye and no left arm, a cane, keeping him upright in his right hand. You have done your research. These 3 could be better than my own students. Yes, I believe they could. Sarutobi looked down and read over the file one more time. Team request. Team root. Sensei. Danzo Shimura and Torun Fu. Team. Naruto Uzumaki, Tenten Higurashi, and Sai. Reasoning. Naruto Uzumaki has shown great skill in taijutsu and kenjutsu. However, he has yet to be trained in stealth and assassination, something he would excel in. Tenten Higurashi, daughter of Kenju Higurashi, aka Konoha's windcutter. It is highly likely that she has inherited her father's high wind affinity. Danzo is the only wind user in Konoha. Wind chakra combined with her long-range weapons would make her a deadly kunoichi, especially when combined with Uzumaki's close-quarters strength. Asuma hasn't returned to Konoha yet. Sai developed a unique skill that allows him to bring creatures he draws to life, using chakra and ink. Skillful in Kenjutsu and Taijutsu, prefers mid-range combat with his ink creatures. Chakra reserves similar to that of previous Ichibi Jinchuriki. Sarutobi hummed and thought, this could prove to be very fruitful. Tenten is long-range support, with her already deadly accuracy, and if your assumption is correct, then the greatest offensive element. Naruto with his physical strength, speed, endurance and Kenjutsu skill in close range. It is Sai I am unsure of. While his skill set seems perfect, I fear that having a team member that fails to understand the value of bonds would hinder the team's growth. Danzo gave his rare smirk. I had a feeling that is what you would believe, so I did something I have never done. I allowed a boy in my ranks to skip a portion of emotional training. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at that. He foresaw all of this? He is as cunning as ever. I do have one question. Under Sensei, you put yourself, along with 2 others, what is the reason behind this? Danzo nodded, expecting the question. I have many duties to this village. I am unable to go gallivanting around the elemental nations with a genin team. Those 2 are 2 of the strongest members en route and their teamwork is flawless. Sarutobi was in thought once again. I will agree to this team, however, before I allow them out of the village with those 2. I want a demonstration of their skills. I will trust my life in your hands, but I won't trust my grandsons on anyone's word. Danzo nodded before leaving. He would have commented about the uselessness of emotional attachments, but knew it would be useless. 2 years later, Naruto stood, glaring at his opponent. He was dressed in a pair of dark, forest green shinobi pants, a matching, long-sleeved shirt with a black vest over it. In each hand are the wakizashi he had just received yesterday. The swords had no guard, the hilts and sheaths were a dark forest green, much like his pants. The blades had been a bright, shiny silver but now were dull and scratched. Not that swords were of poor quality, this fight was just that hard. The sheaths across his back and a blade in each hand, reverse grip in his left hand and standard in his right. Leaf style. Dance of the full moon. Naruto quickly shifted his stance slightly, preparing to block. He had seen this attack over a dozen times and he still couldn't properly defend against it. Suddenly his opponent charged in a blur, a sort of genjutsu cast on himself, causing a dozen overlaying images, ones attacking with an overhead swing, some attacking with a side swing, a few attacking with an under swing. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't tell which was the real one. All the shining blades looked remarkably like a full moon. Taking a guess, Naruto blocked the one going for his right shoulder with his right hand and tried to retaliate with his left hand. Unfortunately, the phantom sword just passed through his. He knew it was over at that point. He felt his teacher's sword cut him from his left thigh, all the way to his right shoulder, and there was nothing he could do. His left leg was numb and he couldn't even feel it, let alone move it. His right arm hung uselessly at his side. You want me to use the crescent moon on you, but you still can't block the full moon. Come on, let's get you to the hospital. No. Arg. Naruto swung his sword with his left hand and attempted to land a shallow cut on his sensei, but his sensei blocked the strike before landing a hard blow to the side of his face with the blunt side of his sword, knocking him unconscious. Hayate looked at the wounds across his student's legs and chest, only to find that when they should have gone about an inch deep, his sword only cut the surface. Kid, you don't know how lucky you are to have your durability, cough asterisk. With that, he picked his student up and made his way to the hospital. When he entered, he was face to face with a furious-looking Kai Hyuga, the boy's personal physician. She turned away with Naruto in her arms and began to walk away, but he is sure he heard something that made him pale. Just know, I'm telling Yugo-chan of the condition you brought the boy she thinks of as a little brother into the hospital. Hayate is gaping like a fish out of water. I'm dead. The next morning, Naruto walks into class and is immediately on the receiving end of Tenten's fist into his head. What the hell is the matter with you, you idiot? I go over to your house yesterday to spar, and Sarutobi-sama tells me you weren't there because you were in the hospital from training. Grr, what do you have to say for yourself? Naruto is sweating profusely while Tenten glares. He couldn't finish as Tenten slammed her fist on his head again, sending him into a heap on the floor. Just as she was about to continue, the whole class felt something that they were slowly getting used to. They felt Iruka's ki and it was directed at Naruto and Tenten, who quickly got to their seats and were quiet. Okay class, this is your last day of the second year. Today, we will be having your final test which will include written, taijutsu and thrown weapons. The four in the back row brightened up at that. They were the strongest four, even if one was technically situated in the middle of the rankings. They were Naruto, Tenten, Lee, and Neji. Lee was the average because he kept freezing up on the written tests, and his thrown weapons was only average. What made them happy was that they all specialize in one of those areas, Naruto, Lee, and Neji in taijutsu and Tenten in thrown weapons. 4 hours later, everyone in class is waiting for Iruka to tell them their grades. Okay, I have posted your grades on the wall. After you check them, you can leave. Be back here in 1 week. Immediately everyone was up looking at the scores. Naruto and Neji tied for first, Tenten was closely behind them, and Lee was in the middle because of his good taijutsu, average thrown weapons but borderline, failing written scores. Naruto was grinning smugly while Tenten glared at him. You think you're so strong? Meet me at training ground 4 in 10 minutes. You're on. Having gotten used to their arguments, the class ignored them as they left the room, glaring the whole way. Next day, Naruto groaned as he sat up. Blunted or not, those things hurt. During their spar, Tenten had taken advantage of the fact that he was injured and unable to move as quickly as usual. Normally, she would hit him with 1 or 2 kunai. No, yesterday she got him with over 2 dozen, each expertly thrown. Knock, knock, knock. Naruto was easily able to recognize the soft knock of his Gramps. What's up Gramps? Naruto-kun, Guy is here. Now Naruto was confused. Guy had told him he had a few days off. Getting up quickly, Naruto made his way to the living room. Guy-sensei? Hello, Naruto-kun. So, what's up sensei? Guy got in his nice guy pose. Well, I just received a mission and it will take quite some time. I was going to give you these when we restarted your training but I will give them to you now. Guy pulled out 2 weight bands lined with kanji. These are your new weights, I want you to wear these at all times. They are completely waterproof so you can bath with them and they are not horribly uncomfortable, making sleeping with them unfairly easy. Now, as for your workout, I want you to do 5 laps around the village, 1,000 push-ups and 2,000 sit-ups every day, got it? Hi Guy sensei. 2 years later, the new graduates sat in a room. Most of their once classmates, gone, failed the exam. All that remained was Naruto, Neji, Tenten, Lee and Inamoy Yamanaka, the nephew of the Yamanaka clan head. While he wasn't very skilled with his clan jutsu, his genjutsu skill more than made up for his weakness. Iruka walked in and smiled proudly. While not many students passed, the ones that did were really good. Team 9 will be Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee, and Inamoy Yamanaka. Lee looked sad that he wasn't on Naruto's and Tenten's team but quickly brightened up. Naruto and Tenten were shocked when they heard a very familiar shout. Dynamic entry. The wall next to the door was turned to rubble, amazing the newly formed Team 9. I am the youthful Meta Guy, and I will be your new sensei. Please meet me at Training Ground 9 in 7 minutes. The new genin blanched. Training Ground 9 was over a 10-minute run away. Without wasting any time, they jumped out an open window and took off running. Iruka had a sweat drop that he couldn't get rid of. Anyways, Naruto, Tenten, you are supposed to meet your sensei and new teammate at Training Ground 36 in 1 hour. They nodded and took off. It only took them 20 minutes to arrive and were surprised to find someone already there. The boy seemed to be about their age, maybe a few years older. Though he seemed relaxed, the second they arrived, they noticed his hand twitch to the tanto on his back. The boy stood up and turned in their direction. They finally got a good look at him. He was slightly tall for his age, about Naruto's height with short black hair and black eyes. His skin was extremely pale. He wore black shinobi pants and sandals with a black and gray jacket that stopped above his stomach. On his back was a tanto. Hello, from the description I received, you must be Tenten Higurashi and Naruto Uzumaki. I am under the impression that we will be teammates. Naruto nodded. I guess, we were just told to meet our teammate and sensei here. By the way, do you know who it is? Sai just shook his head. I'm afraid I do not. Meanwhile, in a tree, overlooking them stood 3 people. One turned to the other 2. Fu, Torun, you know your orders, attack, don't kill. allow me to see their skills and potential." The now identified Fu and Torun looked at their leader and chorused, "Hi Danzo-sama." Naruto, Tenten and Sai were talking, attempting to get a feel for each other's skills. Naruto summed everything up first. "Well, seems like I'm short range, you, Sai, are mid-short range, and Tenten is long range." The other two nodded, having come up with the same idea. Just as he was about to speak, all three throw several shuriken towards the trees. Tenten's, being the fastest, hit against the incoming projectiles while Sai's and Naruto's continued on towards the attacker. They finally got a good view of their attacker. He had a blank Anbu mask on. He had auburn hair and wore a short, red kimono and black shinobi pants. The new genin were shocked when he simply plucked all the projectiles from the air and dropped them on the ground. With their attention on the visible attacker, the other one almost went unnoticed. It was only Naruto's keen sense of smell that allowed him to turn just in time to jump away from a downward slash from a tip-less Tonto. This attacker looked very different but very similar. He too had a blank Anbu mask on. He had short, spiky black hair and wore a high-collared all-black trench coat with a red sash and black pants. He also had on black gloves. Without delay, Naruto drew both his wakizashi and settled into a stance. His left hand held a sword in a reverse grip, blade pointing to the side. His right hand held the sword pointed towards his attacker. All fighters were at a standstill, Tenten holding a small scroll, ready to unleash hell and Sai with a scroll and ink brush, something that both Naruto and Tenten noticed and would have questioned at any other time. Believing she had an opening, Tenten jumped into the air and performed a spinning flip. Over 24 kunai and shuriken flew from her body, each heading directly towards the masked attackers. As the unknown attackers dodged and blocked the incoming weapons, Naruto and Sai began their assault, Naruto attacking and defending with both swords and Sai using an impressive display of a jutsu neither Naruto nor Tenten had ever heard of to keep his opponent at a distance. However, it became obvious that he was no slouch in kenjutsu when the attacker overcame Sai's and Tenten's attacks and got close to Sai. However, this brought something else to their attention. They were both using a tip-less Tonto. In Naruto's state of unawareness, he was caught flat-footed by a swing across his chest. The blade cut his clothes but missed his skin. Being too close to use his swords, Naruto flipped backwards, stabbing both swords into the ground and kicked the attacker in the chin. Just as both were about to charge again, an older-sounding voice cut through the noise like butter. "Stand down." Though the voice sounded old, it had an authority to it, one that people just listened to, one very similar to the current Hokage. What surprised the two new genin was that the two attackers stopped immediately and stood straight up, not even caring that they could kill them. "Fu, Torun, you may return to base, you have done all I needed." "Hi Danzo-sama." Naruto and Tenten looked the old man over. He only had one arm, had bandages over his right eye and walked with a slight limp. However, they noticed that their teammate was not standing beside them, but bowing low. "Danzo-sama." "Rise, Sai." The now named Danzo looked over all three with an appraising eye. "My name is Danzo Shimura. I like to see Konoha prosper. I dislike those who threaten Konoha, and my dream is for Konoha to remain as the strongest village. Now you." Danzo pointed to Tenten. The brown-haired girl couldn't help but obey. He just gave off a leader's aura. My name is Tenten Higurashi. I like training in Naruto. I dislike those who think women cannot be as strong as men. My dream is to be a powerful kunoichi as strong as Tsunade Senju." Danzo's voice cut through the air. "Surpass?" Tenten was slightly nervous still. What? Never strive to be as good as someone else, strive to be better." Tenten nodded slightly and turned to Naruto. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like training, my Gramps and Tenten. I dislike those who think I can't be a shinobi because I can't use nin or genjutsu. My dream is to be a shinobi feared across the elemental nations, just like my Gramps." Danzo then nodded towards Sai. "My name is Sai." Naruto and Tenten were waiting for him to continue but it never happened. Before either could berate the boy, Danzo spoke up. "As I said, my name is Danzo Shimura and I will be your sensei." The ninja life. Danzo was standing in a tree, looking down at his students. They stood in a tight triangle formation, each warding off the attacks of either Fu or Torun. To be honest, he was very impressed. He had expected to have to set aside an entire month to teamwork. However, Naruto and Tenten, each knew each other's abilities so well, that they knew what the other would do, and when they would do it. It was fairly easy for them to add Sai into the formation. Stand down. As if a switch was flipped, Fu and Torun dropped and bowed to Danzo while Team Root merely took a slightly more relaxed stance. They learned quickly not to let their guards down. As per the Hokage's orders, I have taken the time to train you in teamwork. I must say that you reached a satisfactory level quicker than I believed you would. Naruto and Tenten beamed at the thinly veiled compliment, while Sai was his usual stoic self. Now, we will begin working on your individual strengths. Naruto, you will go with Fu. He will teach you stealth as well as various assassination jutsu. Naruto nodded, happy to be learning something new. Sai, you will go with Torun. You will be working on your chakra reserves as well as combat tactics and your personal jutsu. Sai nodded. Tenten, I will be working with you. There are several jutsu I believe would be very beneficial to your fighting style. Tenten nodded with barely restrained glee. Fu gestured for Naruto to follow and took to the trees, Naruto following. Torun did likewise with Sai following in the opposite direction. Danzo continued to stare at Tenten blankly. If she was honest with herself, it was beginning to unnerve her slightly. Tenten, channel chakra into this. Danzo merely handed her a small rectangle of paper, not much bigger than a business card. However, she had seen many of them and knew what it was. Her father sold them in the store. Despite all that, her eyes were wide. But Danzo-sensei, Konoha protocol states that genin are forbidden from being taught elemental manipulation. Danzo merely stood there, his face unchanging for nearly a minute before speaking. As a student of mine, you will quickly come to realize that it is okay to break certain rules, as long as it is for the betterment of Konoha. Still unsure, Tenten nodded. Now, channel your chakra. When she did, the paper slowly split cleanly down the center. Danzo had to repress a frown of disappointment in order to not discourage the girl. However, Tenten was unable to keep the frown from her face. Do you know what that means? Hi, my father explained it to me. The paper splitting down the center means wind. The speed it cuts is the strength of the affinity. Mine traveled very slowly. My affinity is weak. Correct. However, you are young, your affinity will grow as you use it. Now, you will not need much of an affinity for what I have in mind to teach you. With Naruto. Naruto stood in a field, very few trees around, but he still was unable to find his emotionless sensei. He could smell him and he could hear him, however he could not distinguish where the source was. Naruto was surprised when his sensei's voice came from right behind him. I see, Danzo-sama was right. While your disease has in fact improved your senses, you have yet to truly train them. That is the first thing we shall rectify. In this field I have placed 7 scent scrolls around the area. You are to find them, here are their counterparts. Naruto was slightly confused. Scent scrolls? If Fu was annoyed by his question, he didn't show it. They are 2-part seals that give off the same scent. The Inuzuka clan had them commissioned to train both their ninja dogs and themselves. Now, move. Without a second delay, Naruto grabbed the top scent scroll and inhaled deeply, attempting to embed the smell into his memory. With Sai sat in a meditative, seated position, wisps of chakra coming off him like an aura. Torun just watched impassively as the boy in front of him poured out more chakra than many Jonin possess. 6 months later, Training Ground 2. Sarutobi stared at his longtime rival, searching for any deceit. So, you believe they are ready for a mission outside of Konoha? A nod was his only answer. You remember our agreement? Danzo's disposition never changed. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Sarutobi couldn't hold in the smirk. As shrewd as ever. Now, my only test will be for Fu and Torun to at the very least, fight evenly with Kakashi. Danzo stood, staring at Sarutobi. Kakashi was to the Hokage's side, waiting for instructions. Acceptable. Danzo merely picked his cane up before hitting the ground. Because of the grassy field, no noise was made, but his soldiers got the message. It was only Kakashi's honed instincts that allowed the man to jump backwards and avoid the tanto wielded by an orange-haired man with amber eyes. The blade passed so close to his face, that had it had a tip, he would have received a scratch. Sarutobi didn't even bother to move, feeling no nerves at the high-level battle that was about to take place, mere feet from him. Kakashi was staring at his opponent, analyzing everything about him. He certainly moves like an Anbu, used to fighting in the shadows, making quick kills before retreating. He doesn't appear to have much experience in open combat, perhaps I can use that against him. With a sigh, Kakashi's hand moved to his headband. I was really hoping I wouldn't have to use this. The instant the Sharingan eye was exposed, its ability to capture every detail became crucial. In the light of his opponent's eyes, Kakashi saw movement and instantly hit the deck, his foot lashing out, catching his attacker in the jaw, sending the man skidding backwards. Well, now, I think we're going to have fun here. For the first time since the day begun, Kakashi dropped into his stance, a kunai in each hand. With a single hand seal, Fu disappeared into the ground. Just as Kakashi was going to intercept him, he was forced to block a slash that would have severed a hamstring. From the sidelines, Danzo watched as his two strongest subordinates coordinated their strikes and skills to make light of Konoha's strongest Jonin. Sarutobi watched the same fight, and could not help but notice the exact same thing. He immediately identified both men, Fu Yamanaka and Torun Aburame. Both were orphans in their respective clans and the former clan heads volunteered their services to Root. It quickly became apparent that unless something big happened, Danzo's men would win this fight. Kakashi panted as he stared down the two men in front of him. Fu was sneaky and more skilled with underground fish projection jutsu than anyone he had ever met. He seemed to know exactly when and how to emerge from the ground to land a sure strike. Then Torun, the man's attacks were relentless. His Sharingan had instantly identified him as an Aburame. He had used his knowledge of the clan to plan an attack, but everything was wrong. He had never met an Aburame that was particularly skilled in taijutsu. He sure as hell can't say that anymore. Well, this fight is almost over, might as well go out with a bang. Kakashi assumed an upright stance, his arms curled up slightly. First gate. Gate of opening, release. Both Danzo and Sarutobi were slightly shocked that Kakashi would resort to opening even one of the gates. Kakashi's already impressive speed increased 5x as he charged the duo. Luckily for them, their emotional training reduced any shock they would have felt. Even their training under Danzo didn't prepare them for this and Fu was unable to react when Kakashi appeared, punching him in the face and sending him flying. Luckily for the auburn-haired ninja, Kakashi had already focused his attention onto Torun and missed the hand seal Fu made. He also failed to notice that Fu hit the ground the same way someone would hit water. Upon sinking into the ground, Fu began to set up his plan. Kakashi swung punch after punch at the Aburame and the man was having difficulty avoiding the blows. He had learned quickly that blocking was not nearly as effective when the man's strength was now 5x greater than before. Kakashi finally found his opening and landed a heel kick to Torun's chest, sending the man flying backwards. The sound of something coming from the ground behind him had Kakashi turning, his arm already cocked. By the time he could see his target, it was already too late. Kakashi's punch nailed the strange puppet flying backwards. It landed in a heap as Kakashi stumbled. Torun stood, having recovered from Kakashi's kick. He calmly walked towards Kakashi and the two stood side by side before walking over to both Danzo and the Hokage and dropped to a knee. Danzo-sama, your orders have been carried out. Sarutobi didn't know what to say. He thought they would have challenged Kakashi, but to have actually beaten him. He was a borderline S-rank ninja. Danzo kept talented company indeed. Danzo stood, no emotion on his face, but even with the visible emotion, to have been able to beat Sarutobi at something was liberating. Fu, release the jutsu and return Kakashi to his body. Fu, Kakashi nodded before falling to the ground. He didn't stay down long as Kakashi returned to his own skin. Wow, what an out-of-body experience. Kakashi couldn't help but laugh at his own pun. Danzo turned to Sarutobi without acknowledging Kakashi's joke. Are we in agreement? Sarutobi nodded. Make sure they know that they are to keep that team safe. With Team Danzo later that day, the three members of Team Danzo, Team Root sat down in a clearing and ate lunch. As they ate, Danzo spoke. Now, I want to inform you that you will not be attending the upcoming Chunin exams in Kumo. All three were surprised and thinking the same thing. Danzo-sensei seemed very excited about us winning the exams in Kumo. Why did he change his mind? The three knew better than to question Danzo, but he told them anyways. After speaking with the Hokage, we have both decided to delay you until next year. The exams next year will be ones for the ages. Seeing his students' curious look, he decided to sat their desire for knowledge. Next year, we hold the exams. However, on top of that, Maeda Guy's team, the one with the Hyuga prodigy, is waiting. Plus the last Uchiha, along with the clan heirs to nearly every clan in Konoha, will graduate this year and likely participate next year. All of their eyes settled on understanding. I see you understand. While Kumo is probably the current strongest nation, their lack of visitors cause a lot of business to go elsewhere. It also means that nobody would be able to witness the exams. You would simply be showing off for Kumo and the other hidden villages. You would be merely painting a bullseye on your back. However, Konoha allows daimyos, wealthy merchants and many other important people to watch, the people who actually request missions. To have as many talented genin in one exam will likely increase Konoha's mission requests by approximately 20%. The genin nodded. They learned quickly that the only thing Danzo felt any true passion towards was helping Konoha. Okay, I would like to inform you that today, your probationary period of 6 months is over, and you are now allowed to take missions outside of the village. I already received your mission from the Hokage. There is a caravan traveling from the fire capital to several nearby villages and back. However, they ran into some bandit trouble during their last trip and wish to be cautious. You will guard them for the duration of their trip. Any questions? Both Tenten and Naruto turned to Sai. He was their tactician and would know the questions to ask. Yes, how large is the caravan? How many people? How many stops? What villages are we stopping in? What are the caravans selling, and are there going to be any other guards? Good questions. However, I do not have the answers. You will be meeting up with the two that made it in exactly 2 hours at the northern gate. Fu and Torun will accompany you on this mission. They have orders to stay in the shadows unless your lives are in a danger you are unable to handle. All three nodded in sync. Prepare for 2 months out of the village. Dismissed. The 3 genin disappeared in a blur, each towards their home to prepare. Naruto stood in front of his bed. All the equipment he was going to bring was laid out. 2 wakizashi, 6 sets of clothes, 10-foot length of chain with a barbed kunai attached at one end. 100 feet of ninja wire. 36 kunai, 57 shuriken, 4 pepper bombs, 12 smoke bombs, 1 dark green hood, for stealth to cover hair. 1 food pill. Naruto shuddered slightly, thinking about what happens when he takes them. 2 weeks worth of ration bars. Inspecting all his gear one more time, Naruto nodded and began preparing everything, storing most of his items into his backpack and items he could need at a moment's notice in his kunai pouch on his right thigh and tool pouch at his left hip. Tenten looked at the pile of scrolls, each one loaded with enough weapons to supply a small army. She just finished sealing the different weapons she would need into 12 different scrolls. She stored enough weapons for any one battle in each scroll, but had enough scrolls so she wouldn't have to take the time during the mission and perform her self-designed sealing method, which took a lot of time and chakra. She recounted her exploding tags and confirmed that she only had 499 and not the 500 she desired. So with a sigh of frustration, she pulled out her ink brush and a blank note and began to draw, careful to add the correct amount of chakra to each section of the basic seal. After inspecting every aspect of the seal, she nodded and applied the chakra to instantly dry the ink. She placed it on the pile and put 20 into her kunai pouch and sealed the rest into a single scroll. She grabbed all the scrolls and put them in the right spot on her clothes. She long ago made special shirts and pants with scroll pockets. As she walked towards the front door, she heard her father chuckle a little. The chuckle turned into a laugh, and finally, the laugh turned into full-blown howling. Tenten just stared at her father like he was insane. What's wrong, Dad? Trying and failing to stifle his laughter, Kenju just let it out, his slightly graying brown hair waving as he shook his head in an attempt to calm himself. After nearly 10 minutes and a hard punch to the top of the head, Kenju calmed down. I just don't know whether to be proud or embarrassed. About what, Dad? Kenju's giggles came back, but he got them under control. You see, a common problem for a new sensei's first mission out of the village is that they usually don't bring the right equipment. With wide eyes, Tenten ran her hands over every scroll in a manner that would have given any boy her age a nosebleed. No, I have everything: 12 weapon scrolls, 1 seal scroll with exploding and flash tags, and my ready-to-use equipment. Kenju's giggles came back once again. With a sigh, Tenten just began to head towards the door. Her father was obviously joking. "I think you forgot clothes, sweetheart." That froze the 13-year-old girl on the spot. She didn't forget clothes, she wouldn't. That's just not something someone forgets, right? However, much to her embarrassment, she had put an extra weapon scroll in its place. Tenten made the walk of shame back up to her room to grab her clothes, with Kenju talking out loud about how he couldn't wait to tell Naruto-kun. Sai was in his bleak apartment in the village. Since he was joining the standard ninja ranks instead of Root, he needed a standard residence. Sai had long since had his gear packed, checked and rechecked. He simply sat on his bed and drew. Danzo understood his need for drawing. He was placed through more emotional conditioning than most, however, he was never forced to close off all ties. In actuality, that almost made it worse for the pale young man. He had emotions, but just didn't understand them. However, Naruto and Tenten were slowly getting him to open up a bit. 10 minutes till time, and all three arrived at the gate at the same time, each with a determined expression on their faces. They met up with two men. One was rather tall, about 6 feet 4 inches, with brown hair and green eyes. He had a neatly trimmed goatee and wore a rather nice kimono. He was obviously a businessman. He looked like he wanted to sell them something. The other man was shorter, about 5 feet 5 inches, dirty blonde-colored hair, and pale blue eyes. He was clean-shaven and had a decent kimono on, not as high-end as his partner, but still nice. However, he seemed like he just wanted to be everyone's friend. However, being trained ninja, all three could sense the ulterior motive. He was simply a charismatic salesman. The tall, snooty-looking one turned towards the three kids who had stopped in front of them. "There must be some mistake. I paid for ninja, not children." Danzo had long since drilled emotional training into them all. They didn't even react to the man's insult. This alone made him pause. Sai spoke first. "Now, if you are done, there is some information we will be needing before we depart." Now the taller man scowled. "Can't we answer your questions on the way? I want to get this over with." "I'm afraid not. You see, we were given very little details on what this mission entails. We must be certain we have the needed supplies to perform our duties." The taller man just began grumbling. However, the shorter one spoke up in a well-rehearsed, very sincere-appearing smile. "Don't mind Saito, he always thinks with his wallet. Now, why don't you ask your questions and we can get going?" Sai nodded. "How many men will be in this caravan?" "Just us." "How many carriages?" "Just one." "What hostilities do you predict?" The man shrugged. "I don't know, we have been making this run for about 10 years and our families have been doing it for 4 generations. We usually hire a few mercenaries in the fire capital for guards. However, last month, we were attacked by a large group of bandits. They killed the mercenaries like they were nothing and stole the carriage. After taking the cash we had, however, they just knocked us out. We fear they may have learned our route and time frame and left us alive so they can do it again." All three seemed to be in thought. It was Naruto that spoke up. "Seems logical. They have a potential money source, why end it? Have you considered changing your route?" The short man nodded. "Yeah, we had a different route planned, but that storm a few weeks back washed out the southern bridge to Tazaku-gai." Sai nodded and turned to the two men. "Before we continue, may we have your names?" "I am Sai, this is Naruto and Tenten." Though the taller one just kept looking at the time, the shorter one smiled and stuck his hand out and shook all three. "It's great to meet you. My name is Sori Kyoto, and the big guy is Saito Mobashi." "Well, sorry, Saito, it is a 2-day walk at a civilian's pace to the fire capital. I suggest we get moving." That finally seemed to catch the taller one's attention. "I simply ask that you two stay together to make it easier to guard you both." Then Sori nodded and walked beside Saito. He saw that Tenten was slightly in front of him and to his left, while Sai was in front of Saito and to his right. Glancing back, he noticed Naruto was centered between them in the rear. "So, why are they together and you are by yourself?" It was Tenten that spoke up, since Naruto was too embarrassed to. "In a straight-up fight, he is the strongest, no doubt about it." "So, he could beat both of you together?" Tenten just shrugged, not wanting to give anything away. 4 days later. It was a quick in out at the fire capital. The clients had everything prepared. Now, they are approaching the first village on their list of stops. It was Tanzuka-gai, a well-known tourist attraction. It was decided that Naruto would stick close to the clients while Tenten and Sai took to the rooftops to watch for threats and hopefully eliminate them before they could attack. 2 days later, having spent the last hour packing all the gear, the 3 ninja and 2 salesmen were preparing to leave. So far, there had been no threats. 18 days later. That was how the last 18 days went. Travel to a town for 2 days. Wait for clients to sell their wares. Move on. Apparently, the clients owned a very rich diamond mine and sold the freshly cut diamonds to various jewelry makers. Finally, they were done. They just left the final town. It was at the border of the land of rivers but still in the land of fire. It was known as Weeping Willow Village. It was surrounded by the large trees that make up its name. It was a nice, small village with average tourist traffic. They had left the village about 2 hours ago, and Naruto thought he could hear someone following them. It unnerved him quite a bit. However, the noise disappeared altogether, and that scared him even more. He signed to his teammates what he heard. A slightly rustle of clothing was all he heard before the shout. Wind release. Devastation. A giant gust of wind shot towards the ninja and their clients. Sai's quick thinking saved the clients when a large bird picked them up and retreated to the sky. Tenten was able to apply chakra to her feet and stay in place while guarding her face with her arms. Unfortunately, Naruto's condition made it so he needed a second before he could level out his chakra, meaning he couldn't stick to the ground. When he was picked up by the wind and thrown towards the river, his quick thinking saved him. A kunai, attached to a chain, embedded itself deep within a tree, keeping Naruto from being thrown away. After only a few seconds, the wind died down. Damn brother, I thought you would have at least gotten one of them. Shut up idiot, you saw I almost got the blonde one. I don't think the idiot knows how to stick to surfaces. Besides, you remember the last ambush, your first attack didn't get anyone either. Naruto and Tenten were able to get a good look at the attackers. They looked like copies of each other, black shaggy hair, brown eyes, and average height. What surprised them were their ages. It wasn't very often that ninja made it past 20 and they appeared to be in their 30s. The only difference was one wore a dark green tank top, and the other wore a white one. They both had a kusa forehead protector with a slash through it. The two continued to glare and yell at each other until they jumped apart, Sai having rained kunai and shuriken from his elevated position. The two nin barely dodged all the weapons sent their way, Naruto and Tenten having joined in on the ranged attack. Damn it brother, end this. Both men stopped, the one in the green blocking all the weapons that would have hit the one in white. The man in white was busy flashing through hand seals. Wind release, wind bullet jutsu. The man in green hit the ground as a bullet of compressed wind shot straight for Sai, in the air. Sai's ink bird barely dodged the man's attack. However, all three knew what needed to be done. He needed to stay out of range of the attackers while Naruto and Tenten dealt with the two. Sai didn't really understand it, but he truly hoped they came out of this battle okay. Both men had several cuts littering their bodies when they stood, making sure that Sai was nowhere to be seen. The man in green stepped forward, glaring at the two Konoha nin. Now we can deal with you too. Don't worry brother, I got this. Earth release. Earth clone jutsu. For several seconds, it felt as though the very earth itself had begun to shake until suddenly, one by one, copies of the man in green appeared. Soon there was a sea of clones, black hair and brown eyes as far as the eye could see. Naruto couldn't help but whistle as he drew his swords. I'll take the guy with the clones, you get the wind guy? Tenten gave the boy a nod. I'll clear a path. In a blur, the boy was gone, in his wake, pile after pile of mud and dirt. Naruto took a slight reprieve to see how he was doing, he couldn't help but sigh. Damn it, this guy can make new ones just as fast as I destroy them. Wind release, wind bullet jutsu. Naruto glanced over, and saw Tenten nimbly dodge the wind bullet, all the while, hurtling 3 kunai at the man. Though the man dodged, Naruto couldn't help but smile when he saw the kunai sliced straight through solid stone as though it was butter. With a sigh, Naruto charged back into the sea of clones, destroying them by the dozen. As the two continued to fight, they weren't really getting anywhere against their opponents. He could fight these clones all day and not even start to get tired. However, he knew Tenten didn't have the same chakra reserves as he did. But he also knew that the man Tenten was fighting was burning through a lot of chakra. He wasn't about to leave their lives and their mission to chance. That was when the plan came to him. He locked eyes with his longest friend as she dodged several wind bullets. In an instant the entire plan was mapped out, not a word spoken. Tenten jumped back, getting some distance between her and the Kusa wind user. With a smirk, she grabbed 2 scrolls. They may have looked the same as the others, but these ones were different. Stupid girl. We've already established that you can't hit me with your weapons unless you use wind chakra. We also established that you can't use wind chakra on your weapons in your scrolls. So what good will that do you? Ninja art. Rising twin dragons. When the smoke cleared, he noticed that they were simply giant storage scrolls with thousands of weapons. He could deal with that. However, her smirk never left as she began throwing, the number of weapons blocking out the sun. Now Naruto. The man in white's eyes widened. The weapons weren't aimed for him, they were aimed for his brother. He turned around with urgency, only to see the resolute face of his brother's blonde-haired opponent, his sword less than an inch from cutting off his head. Time seemed to stand still for both brothers as it seemed the last sight they would see would be the impalement, beheading of their brother. High in the sky, Sai watched with an emotion he wasn't overly sure of, but he thought it might be happiness that Naruto and Tenten both won without taking any real injuries. Following procedure for when protecting a client, Sai created another bird and 3 clones, ones that looked like him and the 2 clients, and had it land. When the 5 conversed for several minutes with no other attacks, Sai deemed it safe to return to Earth. Upon landing, the root ninja was unsure what to do. He didn't know what would be proper in this instance. For several seconds the 3 stood there, Naruto and Tenten still feeling rather proud of their first fight, not overly affected by the fact that they just killed 2 men. Sai turned to them, placing a hand on each of their shoulders, getting their attention. Well done, Flatchest. In an instant both of their moods had deflated. A distinct growl made its way from Naruto's throat. Do I have to kick your ass again to get you to stop with that? Before the argument could escalate any further, the tall man, Saito, spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. If you don't mind, I'd really like to get home. For a civilian, the man was really good at hiding his emotions. He just watched 2 12-year-olds kill 2 grown men and then joke around, the men's bodies still pooling blood. Instantly, the atmosphere changed. They were the harsh killing machines he had seen earlier. The 3 nodded and Tenten went to work sealing the more expensive weapons while Sai sealed the bodies of the 2 nin. Naruto flipped through his bingo book, hoping for a clue on their identities but couldn't find anything. It was only a few minutes later that both Sai and Tenten were finished. The carriage had been damaged in their initial attack, leaving the 3 ninja to carry the men's stuff. Luckily, Tenten just sealed it into a scroll for transport. Noon, following day. Naruto sighed. The village gates were finally in sight. The trio of ninja had dropped their clients off at the fire capital 2 hours earlier and then began heading home. Naruto and Tenten were glad to see the village gates. The second the 3 crossed the threshold into Konoha, they were alerted to 2 presences that appeared beside them. It was Fu and Torun. Having finished the mission successfully, the 2 could now show themselves. Fu turned to the 3 genin. Report to Hokage-sama now and be at the usual training ground tomorrow at 6 a.m. The 3 nodded to their auburn-haired sensei and took off towards the Hokage Tower. Sarutobi sighed as he overlooked another useless matter. I hate this job. Naruto walked in the room, unnoticed by the distracted Sarutobi as the man said that. You know, I don't think you're allowed to say things like that. Your ninja might lose faith in you. Sarutobi smiled towards his grandson and his team. Welcome back, Naruto. Report. Naruto assumed an upright stance, Tenten on his left and Sai on his right. The blonde boy began going over the details of the mission. When he was done, Sarutobi was intrigued. Kusa missing nin in their 30s, you say? The Hokage thought for a few minutes but came up with nothing. And they weren't in your bingo book? At Naruto's shake of his head, Sarutobi walked over to his bookshelf and began to search. Ah, here it is. Look in here, I'm sure you'll find them in here. The book was much larger than the field version they give out to Konoha shinobi. The symbol of Kusa on its cover. That, Naruto-kun, is a compilation of every missing nin to ever come from Kusa. When either a bounty is collected or a nin is believed dead, they are removed from the bingo book. However, they stay in there forever. Naruto and Tenten crowded over the book as they flipped page after page. It was in the middle of the C rank section that they found them, at least what seemed to be them. Rank C. The Satsuma brothers. Academy graduation age, 6. Alias. N.A. Status. Missing, dead. Info. Twins, hailed as prodigies during the Third Shinobi, used a combination of flawless teamwork and their respective jutsu to wear the enemy down before going in for the strike. Particularly skilled at preparing ambushes at a moment's notice. Charges. Failed to report in after a successful mission during the war. They have been unheard from since that time. Skills. One is particularly skilled with earth release, the other uses wind release. Reward. 45,000 for both. Naruto and Tenten both spent a few minutes examining the pictures and agreed. This is them. As Sarutobi looked at the info, he was surprised. They must have been rather impressive, granted their bounty wouldn't have attracted much attention, but to survive as a missing ninja for nearly 20 years is quite the feat. I'll be sure to send the bodies to Kusa and will make sure you each receive your portion of the bounty. The three teens nodded and waited for Sarutobi's next orders. You are dismissed. With a bow, they were gone. Sarutobi couldn't help but smile. Your father would be proud of the man you're becoming. Asterisk 2 months later. You proved in yesterday's training that you are all improving well. Go to the Hokage Tower and request a mission. You are to complete the mission and return. Understood, Danzo-sensei. In the past 3 months, they had taken 5 C-rank missions. Each one ended with their blades getting bloodied, and while it affected Naruto and Tenten at first, they have both come to terms with the job they signed up for. The three made their way quickly through the village and towards the Hokage Tower, their 2 ever-present shadows following at a distance. Neither Fu nor Torun have had to reveal themselves in even one mission. When they arrived, they were immediately allowed in to see the Hokage. Ah, Team Danzo, here for another mission? Naruto spoke for all of them. Yes, Hokage-sama. The elder Hokage looked through the missions before finding one that would suit an assault and assassination team. Ah, here we go. A small group of bandits have been attacking various travelers on the road to and from Tanzuka town. We can't have that, now can we? I want them gone. All 5 nodded and chorused. Yes, Hokage-sama. When they disappeared, Sarutobi smiled fondly thinking about his grandson. I was worried about making Danzo, Naruto's sensei, but it is obvious that his methods are indeed effective. Though the old war hawk may not know it, the will of fire burns deep in his veins and he is causing theirs to burn brightly. Since they all carried the gear they would need, they set out for Tanzuka town. Sai gave the symbol to halt and the other 2 complied without complaint. Sai pulled out his scroll and began to draw. Moments later, a large caravan was made, 2 civilian mercenaries walking alongside it and several wealthy businessmen inside. A smirk crossed Naruto's face. Nicely done, Sai. The 3 ninja waited patiently for the caravan to get ahead of them and they proceeded to follow it, taking to the trees. It was after nearly 2 hours of travel that they saw movement. Naruto got a whiff of 4 different scents. In an instant 3 men charged from the trees, and the civilians could do nothing as they were each cut down. The bandits looked at their targets in confusion when they started to melt. One of the bandits touched one of them, smelling the strange black substance. Ink? Sai's emotionless voice sent a chill of fear down the back of each of their necks. Ink clone. Burst. The bandits could only watch with fascination as symbols began appearing on the melting people. When the symbols stopped moving, a voice was heard. Get back. Boom. When the smoke cleared, Naruto gave an impressed whistle. The ground was burned black where the explosion reached. The 3 dead bandits' bodies were thrown across the road. Damn, your ceiling is getting better, Sai. A series of curses flew from the bushes. Hey, asshole, do you have any idea how hard it is to find idiots that will do whatever I tell them to? Well, let me tell you, it is surprisingly hard. Before he could continue, all 3 genin threw several kunai at him. He was surprisingly nimble and able to dodge easily. Now the genin could get a good look at the nin. He was surprisingly from Konoha, if the headband was anything to go off. He wore brown pants and a gray shirt. His hair was as black as his eyes. You kiddies may have some skill after all. Without waiting for a response, he pulled out 2 kunai and flashed through several hand seals, the kunai hanging from his pinkies. Lightning release. Offensive bolt jutsu. The unknown Konoha nin threw the kunai and as they flew, a small stream of electricity danced between them. All 3 easily dodged and moved for the attack. Tenten kept him from running with well-placed kunai and shuriken, Naruto attacked head-on with Kenjutsu and Sai backed him up with two one-tailed foxes that reached Naruto's waist. While Naruto was much better at Kenjutsu, the man's ability to channel lightning chakra was making things difficult. Just as he was about to get kicked away, one of the foxes hit the man with his tail. At least he would have, had he not turned into a log. The three easily found the fleeing man and cut off his retreat. Through signals they had been working on, they came up with a plan. 30 seconds later, the plan went into action. Two ink snakes burst from the ground and held the nin in place. Just as he was about to destroy the snakes with his lightning chakra-charged kunai, Naruto went in for the strike, and cut the man's hand off. His screaming didn't last long as two kunai impacted him. One in the neck, the other in the heart. The three watched impassively as the man died a quick death. With next to no reaction, Tenten walked up and placed a scroll to his chest, sealing the man's body. Sai pulled his scroll out and began drawing once again. The same caravan was formed. We shall continue to Tanzuka town. Upon arriving we will get an inn for the night before returning to Konoha in case there are more bandits in the area. Neither Naruto nor Tenten complained as they slowly followed Sai's creation. The rest of the mission occurred with no attacks and no issues. The three were now making their way to the Hokage tower to report to their leader. When they arrived, they brought the body to the Hokage and found out he was a rather talented Konoha Chunin who lost his way after failing the Jonin exams. They received their pay and each went home for the night. 3 months later. It was late into the night and Naruto, Tenten and Sai were facing off against Fu and Torun once again. They normally would have stopped training hours earlier, but the Chunin exams were in only 6 months and they weren't going to be unprepared. Just as the two root operatives were going to charge again, a standard Konoha Anbu dropped into their training grounds. The Anbu fell to a knee, bowing her head. Danzo-sama, Hokage-sama requests you mobilize your root soldiers to assist in capturing this man. Danzo looked at the picture with interest. It was a Konoha Chunin with silver hair. The charges? Without a hint of emotion, the Anbu spoke. Chunin Mizuki of Konoha is charged with stealing the Forbidden Scroll of Seals. Danzo was unable to keep the surprise from his face. How? I know that Chunin he was nothing special. Not to mention he had no skill in sealing. There would be no way for him to crack the blood seal that kept the scroll locked away. Turning to his two highest-ranking soldiers, Danzo gave his orders. Fu, Torun, gather units 1 to 17, mobilize them across the village. Find that scroll. If you can't keep it out of enemy hands, you have permission to destroy it. With a quick bow, the two were gone. Danzo looked at his charges that were looking at him with interest. Join the search, Mizuki should not be a problem for any of you. In a blur, the three were gone. Danzo too disappearing in his own burst of speed. The only one left in the field was the wide-eyed Anbu, her purple hair billowing in the wind slightly. Bastard, he just sent a genin after a Chunin. Is he trying to get them killed? The Anbu ignored the Hokage's orders to rejoin the search and instead began to tail Naruto's team. With Mizuki, the silver-haired Chunin quickly ducked into a dark alley as a team of Anbu pass above him. Damn, they're pulling out all the stops. Soon Orochimaru-sama will give me the power I deserve. Using the surprisingly vast amount of stealth skills that he possessed, Mizuki made his way out of the village and into the surrounding woods. With Team Danzo, Naruto, Sai, and Tenten stopped on the branch of a tree, overlooking the village. Sai's mind began workings. I believe we should search along the west wall. Naruto looked at the boy like he was crazy. Why? The Hokage Tower is only a mile from the east wall. Why would he make the 10-mile trip through the village? Sai made no visible reaction. For that exact reason, everyone will expect for him to rush to leave the village, just look. Sai gestured to an Anbu team that was moving towards the east wall of the village. They ran through the village without as much as a second glance. Naruto could find no fault in his idea, so the three took off, heading towards the west wall. Though with alert eyes, the three made it through the village and to the forest within 20 minutes. As they were moving, a yell gathered their attention. How could you, Mizuki? Ga! Naruto's and Tenten's eyes narrowed while Sai's remained impassive. The team shared a nod and took to the trees. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.